All right, welcome back, everybody. So, just got back from 2 days off. Well, 2 days off from the airplane build. I was on a work trip. Back at it yesterday and today, the 22nd. So, just deburring the vertical stabilizer skins. Those close-in areas, I find it's a little easier to take the bit out. I 3D printed a handle for that bit, but it keeps slipping out, so I'm going to have to go back and redesign that and try it again. But for now, this works. I did edit a lot of this out, so you're not stuck watching all the endless time of deburring all the holes, but you get to suffer through some of it. So if you've read the description for this video, you know that there's a fairly decent mistake that's going to happen in this one. I'll go over it in more detail as we get to that part, but stay tuned. That should be enough of that. On to the next one. So wipe it all down, make sure there's no burrs left, go back and deal with anything that got left behind. And now it's time to start dimpling the skin. The squeezer is still working great, and I'm just cruising along, making good progress here, reaching all the holes that I can. Those inside ones I'll have to get with the C-frame. But I got my rhythm, and I'm just moving right along until yep, I just did the infamous figure 8. I know there's absolutely nothing I can do about it at this point, but for those that don't know, the die slipped out of the hole as I was stepping down on the pedal to dimple, and the hydraulic squeezer has more than enough force to punch a fresh hole. So I know there's nothing I can do about it, so I'm just going to go ahead and continue dimpling the skin while I think about what I've just done to myself. I'll get you a little close up here. The clean hole is the one I should have dimpled, and then there's the one that I made. So, phone call time to Vans. I have an idea how I'm going to fix it, but I need to run it by them. And then I'll be going over to some audio from the garage here after the phone call to let you know what the decision is and how I'm going to move forward with this. But while I'm on hold, I figure I might as well just dimple the rest of these holes because, well, it still needs to be done. If I'm going to press on, it's all got to get done. Here's a shot of the figure 8 hole, and then the start of me fixing it, which is drawing that center line and marking out the next 2 rivets. All right, we're gonna try something different. Yeah, we're going live from the garage right now. I'm sure VoiceOver Me has already explained the mistake that I made, but I'll give you another look at it. I made a figure 8 hole. I don't know if that's going to focus or not. Yeah, we'll see. But I was going along, dimpling, and thought it was in the hole, and the die popped out of the hole just as I was stepping down on the pedal, and yeah, the hydraulic squeezer has no qualms about punching a fresh hole in the aluminum. So I looked it up on Vans Air Force. If you guys saw in the video, I don't know if you noticed or not, I was on hold for a while, but I also called Vans. The plan that I gave them is what they approved and what they recommended. I can replace the skin, obviously. It's a $100 part plus shipping, and supposedly it is in stock, but I don't know. I feel like if I do this continuously through the airplane and constantly replace parts that don't necessarily need to be replaced just because I made a visual imperfection to it, then I may never get this thing done and it's going to cost me twice as much. So they agree that it is not going to be structural in any way, shape, or form. So the plan now, I don't know if you can see it, but drew out the center line. I'm going to cleco this back to the skeleton. I'm going to center punch right there for a rivet on either side, and then I'm going to go ahead and drill through this and into the spar, and then I'll dimple those after I clean them out, and I'll put a rivet on either side of the mistake. I was going to put a rivet in there as well, and I don't know, I might not. They said I don't need to. They said that it'll be perfectly structural with just those, and then I fill that in with JB Weld or micro with body filler, something along those lines, just to hide the imperfection. My concern is if I do try and put a rivet in there just for the aesthetics, the pressure of the rivet squeezing may cause this to tear out more. Maybe not, especially if I squeeze it light. At this point, it doesn't need to be a properly set rivet. It's just a cosmetic rivet. So that's the game plan. Unfortunately, I mean, this is the vertical stab, this is the trailing edge of it. It's going to be up there and prominent and proud as the plane sits there, but I don't think it's going to be too visible, especially once this thing finally gets all of the filler and paint and everything else it's going to get on it in the final product. If this was going to be a completely polished plane, yeah, that might be a different story. So that's my plan. I'm just going to go ahead and press on with pride and make it structural and do my best to make it as pretty as I can after the fact. So yeah, hopefully I don't do that again, but there's a long ways to go, so who knows what's going to happen. Spoiler alert, I know what's going to happen. So anyways, I have center punched and then drilled those 2 holes. Those are now going to be the structural rivets that are going to hold that spot in place. I then decided to upsize the messed up hole to a number 30, and then I dimpled the correct hole, cleaned everything out, deburred the other holes, and then dimpled them as well. And then later on you'll see I'll use a oops rivet as a cosmetic rivet in that spot, but you'll see more of that later. So now I'm getting the C-frame back on the table and getting it set up so I can finish dimpling all of those inside holes I can't reach with the squeezer. And yeah, I was being extra cautious with these holes. I think I don't mind doing a fix for one, but if I ended up doing that again on the same skin, at that point, yeah, I probably would spend the money and just buy a new part. I'm sure I'm not even close to the last of the parts I'm going to mess up on this. Coincidentally, Chris over on the Hippie Pilot channel commented on my Instagram post when I made it that now I can consider myself a real builder because I've made a figure 8 hole. I can't tell you how accomplished I feel. Even better that it's fixed now, though. And also thanks to him, I knew better than to put that doubler in backwards. It's got machine countersinks on one side that have to mate up to dimples in that spar that I put together, and I can see how it would be real easy to not notice that I'd put it in backwards because it feels weird not having the countersinks facing up for some reason. So thanks to his video for saving me on that one. I did not have to experience that mistake. So now I'm putting those big Dash 4 countersinks in and getting them all squeezed in place, and they came out pretty good. The squeezer is definitely the way to go when it's time to set rivets. Alright, those are done, and now it's on to the other domed head Dash 4 rivets, the 470s that hold the rest of that doubler and the hinge brackets and everything else in place on that spar. Feels like at least 75% of the work on that vertical stabilizer is all just in this one spar. Everything else went much, much quicker. But I guess there's a lot of strength that has to go here. This is the main support for the vertical stabilizer, and it's also the connection point for the rudder itself with those hinge brackets, so there's probably a whole lot of stress on that one part in flight. Going through with the rivet gauge, just making sure everything got set correctly. Now it's time to get some pictures for the gram. And there's the finished product. It can get set to the side and move on to the rest of the skeleton. So these went together pretty quick. Had to clean some of the holes back out. The primer definitely adds a little thickness to the holes when you prime after the fact. But the reamer does a pretty good job of just cleaning it out and not having to deburr or anything again. So back to figuring out how to get the squeezer in, on, and around things to get rivets set. Some of them I made a little harder than I needed to on myself. Like this one right here. Thankfully, after I set this one, I realized those dies can go in either way, and it'd be a lot easier if I just flip them around in the squeezer and come at it from the other side. So that's it, skeletons together. Now it's time to make it one with the skin. Using my handy little stands again, set the skeleton down in there, and then just start clecoing it in place and drawing the skin in. This still goes together so much easier than the horizontal stabilizer. The nose ribs in this one sink down a lot farther in there. I didn't have to fight with it near as much. So spin it around, get some start on the other side. Once I've got it all set, then it's a cleco in every other hole. And I realized since I got to stick my arm down in there to rivet all the front spar holes, it's a lot easier to just do this back on the ground again. So now I am shooting and bucking the rivets. This went a lot better than it did on the horizontal stabilizer. If there's too much more like this, I'm definitely going to have to build a medium height work stand or something to set these parts on so I can stand up and do this. Or get myself a long step stool that I can walk around on in front of my regular workbenches. Something, but doing this down on the ground is not very pleasant. Alright, so those are all set, or at least I think they are. And it's time to start squeezing the ones on the outer edge. I also have the rear spar now clecoed in place. I'm using those clamps right there because just on the nose spot on all of those nose ribs, the skin was pulling away just a little bit, and I didn't like that, so I used the clamps to cinch it up tight before I set the rivet, which seemed to do the trick because it held it once it was riveted in place. So now I'm setting rivets, but I'm putting them in place, but I'm not setting them, and I got to a point where I realized I made another mistake. And so you see I'm pulling all the clecos out to get the rear spar out of the way because for whatever reason I forgot to rivet that middle rib in place while I had it on the ground and opened up. Thankfully I caught it. And it's not too hard to just take the spar back out and get my arm in there and get those rivets set. I wish I could say this is the first time I've made that mistake, and I wish it was the last time, but apparently I'm not capable of learning that lesson, so I'm sure this is going to happen again. Okay, so that's all fixed. Back to setting the rest of the rivets. Flip it over and finish the other side, and then I realize there is one more rivet that I forgot to set before I got the skin all the way on. I guess I thought I could reach it with the squeezer because it's down on the end of the front spar, but there's a rib in the way. Thankfully, there was enough wiggle room in the skin on that side. I could get my arm in there, shoot that one rivet, and then go back and get the rest of them all set. So many lessons learned. Time to set the middle pull rivets in the middle rib, and I don't know what's up with that Milwaukee riveter. I'm getting pretty fed up with it. Hopefully it starts working right soon, but it would only squeeze one of them, or it would only pull one of them, and then I had to get the hand puller out for the others. All right. No idea if this is going to work or not, but there's the fix. You can still see a little tiny remnant of the figure 8 hole. If you look at it from the side, it's actually really flush. So what I ended up doing was I put an oops rivet in there. Fix this. I used this oops rivet kit. I up drilled the hole size to number 30 to try and get rid of as much of that jagged edge as I could, and then I cleaned it out and smoothed out the edges, and then I went and added that rivet. And if I run my finger across it, I can just barely feel a little ripple there, but I think it's going to be all right. So there's the final product. I put a little JB weld in that little nick that's left, and I think it actually came out good. See you on the next one.